Welcome to the Marketing Revolution podcast. This is the underground movement of savage marketers from all over the world. We are not Fortune 500 companies. We are real entrepreneurs with real businesses that have one major thing in mind: to set goals and devour them daily. Because we understand that everyone wants to eat, but only savage marketers are willing to do the hunt. Now let's get this revolution started.
Hey, what's up, everybody? John Hiley here with the Marketing Revolution podcast and the Marketing Savage Facebook group. I hope you guys are having an incredible day today. Coming here today with a very important podcast where we are interviewing the one and only Tom Ziglar. How you doing today, Tom?
Well, I'll tell you what, John, I'm doing better than good, but that's like genetically required.
It's genetically required in this day and age, huh?
That's right.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So many of you guys might not know this, but Tom he came on board on a previous podcast that I had called PDR Tool Time. And I was looking back, this was maybe 4 to 5 years ago. And Tom is a very, very sharp individual. And back then we were talking about a lot of different things. We were talking about the Two Chairs, which is I want to say that's a friend of yours, Tom, who had written that book.
Bob Bodine wrote Two Chairs, great friend.
Yeah. So, which is an incredible book. Many of you guys know, if you listen to I do a Savage Sunday sermon here every week. So we talk about, the principles of, not only God, but just religion in general. And I don't think I've actually went over that specifically, but it's incredible because I've been practicing that book ever since I had met Tom, and he had suggested that book during that podcast, and I actually read it and have been practicing that ever since, which is an incredible thing. And Tom here he has a massive coaching program with the Ziglar. Is it Ziglar Legacy?
We have our Ziglar Legacy, which is for speakers and trainers, and then we have our Ziglar coaching system for people who just really want to focus on being a coach.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. So anybody to get the audience to get to know you, Tom, let's just talk a little bit about yourself. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, what you do day to day, and what you're doing with the entire Ziglar outfit over there.
You bet. I will be 56 years young February 1st. And people say, how long have you been in the business? And I tell them 56 years because I was born into it. And what we do, my mission is to create the atmosphere that allows you to become the person that God created you to become. And of course, at Ziglar Inc., Zig Ziglar Corporation, we have over 5 decades of content, material, experience. We've been all over the world. My father, Zig Ziglar, spoke to, we estimate that he impacted about 250 million people in his life. 45 books published and created, millions of downloads. Our podcast we were one of the early adopters. I think we're in the 12th or 13th year of our Ziglar Show podcast. So we've been doing it a long time, over 850 episodes now.
Right.
Even with the sabbatical in the middle of it, we do about 2 a week. But we help business owners, leaders, individuals develop their foundational aspects of life: mental, spiritual, physical, family, personal, and career. And then we take it to the next level where we equip and license speakers, trainers, and coaches to take this material and go out and change lives in their own community. And really that's what, keeps me going, is our community of coaches and speakers who have their own mission, their own niche, what they want to accomplish. And they've already built their business on the philosophy of Ziglar. And now we make it really easy for them to take this and go out and not only teach and develop and train their employees, but if they want to make a business out of it, they can go and do that as well.
Right. And and there was quite a few Ziglar coaches here around the Dayton area. And that's one of the ways that I got connected with Tom. So I knew some of the coaches in the network. In fact, we had like a local mastermind group that was going on back then. And that's exactly how I first connected with Tom. And man, that's an incredible thing. And what you just said at the beginning of this is that is your drive, is that you can, Zig Ziglar, your father, has impacted over 250 million people, and I would say probably even way more than that. I mean, if you ultimately think about it, I mean, even more than that, because I would say, he's impacted the world, probably across the entire world, whether we know it or not, because most of the sales techniques, most of the knowledge that was just given in his earlier, I had the CDs, like I literally had the Zig Ziglar CDs, and that's exactly how I learned how to sell. Like I was listening to Zig Ziglar and I was listening to Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and I was going back and forth between the both, because I needed the mental game from Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, but I needed all the sales tactics and also the mental game that I was learning from Zig Ziglar in them CDs. And I still remember, like he's the most absolutely hilarious individual. Like he would keep you entertained during these CDs or these ebooks. So if you haven't downloaded them, I highly recommend it. But I specifically remember, your dad saying things like, back when I was growing up, we had, running water, and that was the kind that you have to actually go run and get. And but there are still closing techniques that he had a way of simplifying things. We tend to really make things very complicated, and Zig had a way of simplifying things by storytelling, which is just an incredible, I believe that's like a superpower, to be able to tell a story and convey a message. And Tom just said there, one of his goals is to, share and create, like to develop you in the way that God created you to be, like the absolute best you can be, the absolute best version that you can be. Now, what do you think, Tom, are some of the principles? What are some of the things? So some of my audience listeners out here, obviously they're here for a reason. They want to be the best version of themselves. What's some of the advice that you could give them to take our God-given qualities and actually utilize them in the way that God intended us to?
Well, first I would get real clarity on what it is you want to achieve. What do you want to become? What's your why? What's your purpose? And everybody says that, but let me just give you a simple example. Our culture, our society, the media, all, especially marketing groups, they've been preaching that it's all about being happy, right? Buy this, do that, invest in this, go here, eat that cheesecake and you'll be happy. And one of my mentors, his name is Rabbi Daniel Lapin.
Love him.
He's phenomenal. He said this. He said that the opposite of depression is not happiness. The opposite of depression is purpose. And so, if you're leading a team or you're speaking to an audience, and I'll just tell you right now, I mean, the pandemic, a lot of them are home, they're disengaged, they're scared, they're disconnected, they're afraid, they're wondering what's going to happen next. They might have had a health issue, them or their spouse lost a job. And so they're going through it. And the way humans are, and we listen to all this programming, we want to be happy. So what do? We buy cheesecake and, we get a 12 pack instead of a 6-pack. We do all these things, and that creates a downward spiral. And so you need to determine in your own mind, what does success look like? What does that look like for you? And for us, what we teach is it's got to be balanced. And there's 7 areas of life that you need to be winning in: the mental, the way you think; the spiritual, your faith, your character and integrity, what you stand for; the physical, which is your health, which gives you energy and clarity and allows you to, step into and accomplish the things that you want. Then there's your family. Maybe, the most important thing in our life is our relationships and our family. And then our finances. What do we do with the money that we have? And then our personal ambitions and goals, maybe the hobbies that you love, the things that bring you energy, and then the career. And I have another, Dad used the word career. I like to use economic engine, because, you can be a speaker, you can be a coach, you can be a business owner, you can be an investor, doesn't matter. You need to be doing well in all 7 of those areas. So when you get that clarity of, hey, this is what success looks like, and then you get really, you do the dad call it the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal. And John, I see you smile. You've heard that term before.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You put out that BHAG, the thing that you really want to accomplish. And then you make sure that aligns with your purpose. And then this is kind of cool. You do PPAs. And so a PPA is what I call a purpose producing activity. And so one question I would ask everybody, how would you like to how would you like to wake up in the morning knowing that when you go to sleep that night, you're going to be closer to your purpose?
That's key.
Right. So this is how you do it. You identify who you need to become, the skills you need to learn, the activities and effort you need to do in order to get closer to your purpose. And then you do those purpose producing activities every day. And that's kind of cool. Do you know Dan Miller by chance? 48 Days to the Work You Love. And
okay, now I've heard that before. Yeah.
Okay. So I was with his grandson, Caleb, and Caleb asked me a question because the book I wrote, Choose to Win, is about habits. And he said, how do you know if you have a bad habit? And he was 25 at the time. And it seems like such a simple question. And it's maybe one of the most profound questions I've heard in a while. And I said, well, that's a great question, because if your goal was to get lung cancer, smoking would be a good habit, wouldn't it?
It would.
And so here's what I mean by this. When we know our purpose, we can identify the steps we need to take to get there. And we simply turn those into habits, because a good habit is just a purpose producing activity done every day. The problem in the world is we're all running, but it's not necessarily to where we want to go.
Sure.
And what's the point of running to the wrong place? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Do you know of Pastor Keith out there? I can't remember the name of his church, but he's in the Dallas area.
Keith Craft?
Yes. So
is it Elevate? What's the
Elevate? Yeah. So Keith spoke at one of the, it's been like 4 or 5 months ago at one of my mastermind meetings in Dallas. And one of the interesting things is Keith broke it down. I wish I could break the whole thing down like he did, but I'll just start with just the beginning. He broke it down how God created the earth in 7 days and how we can not only lead our life, but like he taught us like how to build a business within what he did on every one of them days. You know, all the way down to the points where you talk about you got to gain clarity. He talked about when God on the first day, he said, let there be light. That was us getting our vision so we could see, because you can't see without light. You don't have clarity without light. That was our ability. When God said, let there be light, he was telling us to get a vision for our life, you know, all the way down to, he broke it down to taking the very last day off, taking the 6th day or the 7th day off. And he made a good point that Chick-fil-A only operates 6 days a week and sells more fast food than every single one of their competitors combined in 6 days. But it was incredible. We went down from one thing to the next. And, you know, I see a lot of things that literally, I always say that I can learn just as much from looking at nature, what God actually created us, the ecosystem that God put us in. I can learn as much from watching nature, understanding it, that a farmer has to plant a seed with faith and expectancy that seed's going to grow one day. See, the farmer has to put in the work before they see the results. And that's God just trying to teach us that whatever we do today, we're not going to see anything for 90 days, 100 days, a year, 2 years, depending on what result we're moving towards. But are we going to hold the faith inside to walk towards and understand that that desire that's been given to us is from the Father? And, you know, Tom, you're a good father. You had a great father. Many of you guys had great fathers. When you promise your child something, are you going to give it to him? Well, God's the good father. And when God gives you these desires, He's telling you that you have to walk in faith and expectancy towards them. And just like Tom said here, you got to understand wherever you want to be, you got to understand, like, what does that guy look like? What's that guy doing on a daily basis?
Yeah.
You know, do your research, look at people that are already there, and understand that you got to start implementing them habits in your life today.
I love it. I love it. I've got two little stories that you just spawned. That's why I love getting together with people who are like-minded, who are constantly working on growing, especially when their purpose is to grow so they can help others grow. I mean, that to me, that's the ultimate. That's what legacy is. The first one is a story about my daughter when she was little. Okay, so dad's out there, mom's out there. You know that you've seen this scene. If you have kids, a lot of times when they're in that 4 or 5 year old range, they'll get in your lap, right? They'll just come up and after about 60 seconds, they'll look up and they'll say, "Daddy, can I have some ice cream?" And at that very moment, you know you've been played. Right? And
Yes.
other times they'll get in your lap, and after a couple of minutes, you'll just say, "Hey, baby, why are you up in daddy's lap?" And they'll say, "I just wanted to be close to you."
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you buy them the ice cream store.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think a lot of times in our faith and our, we pray a lot when we get in trouble. We pray a lot when we want the big deal. It's kind of the stuff thing. And I think God's kind of saying, look, just cling to me and we'll do this together, and more than you can imagine will happen. The other story I wanted to tell you is Dad made famous this idea of the be, do, and have philosophy. You got to be before you can do, and you got to do before you have. And what that means is you got to become the right person, and then you do the right things, and then you can have all that life has to offer. So be, do, have. So I'm listening to Rabbi Lappin, and he talks about Genesis 2:15. So you're talking about, the creation of the world and the Garden of Eden and the farmer and all those kind of things. Well, Genesis 2:15, this is what the verse says. The verse says, and God put Adam in the garden to nurture and keep the garden. And so growing up in the Baptist church, Protestant, whenever that verse got pulled out, that meant it was tithing Sunday. I mean, you know what? As a business owner, as a worker, your job was to go out and be fruitful and multiply and grow your business, grow your garden, bring the tithes into the storehouse, right? Give to God. And then Rabbi Lappin said, yeah, but that's not what that verse means.
Yeah.
So check it out. So in Hebrew, the masculine noun and the masculine verb attach. The feminine noun and the feminine verb attach. So God put Adam in the garden to nurture and keep the garden. The problem is nurture and keep and garden don't attach. He wasn't put in the garden to nurture and keep the garden. You have to go back to an earlier verse. Adam was put in the garden to nurture and keep his soul.
Oh, wow.
And so here's the problem. As business owners, we think that the solutions are in figuring out how to make the garden work. When actually God was saying no. And remember, Adam was in paradise at this time. This is before the fall. So he had open communication to God. And even in paradise, even walking side by side with the Creator told him, look, you've got to keep your soul. And so when we work at Ziglar, we have a lot of business owners, and when we work with them, that's where we focus. What we've discovered is this: if the business owner is right in their soul, in their mental, their spiritual, their physical, the family, the financial, the personal, and the career, if those things are right, their business is going to do fine. Yeah. They're ready to learn. They have the capacity to grow. So when you said farmer and what Keith Craft said, that just really hit on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting enough, I talked about this in a previous podcast. When God came into the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve were hiding, and God said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Well, we're naked." The very first thing that he said was, "Who told you that?" He didn't say, "How did you think of that? Where did that come from?" So my idea behind that is that the negative voice inside of our head does not stem from the origin of God. That negative voice inside of our head that's telling us telling us that we're in a sense naked, right? We should be ashamed, is not coming directly from the voice of God. And I had this realization. I'm like, your dad called that stinking thinking.
That's right.
And it's like, where did that stinking thinking come from? And just some incredible insights that you can find biblically. And that's why I talk about this. This show just became the Savage Sunday Sermon, by the way. So we'll be dropping it on this coming up Sunday live on the podcast, because I believe it just fits in perfect with the Savage Sunday Sermon, which is, I think it's my best show out of the entire week, because it's the time that we can get very, very spiritual and and talk about this kind of stuff. A lot of things that we talk about as well on the show is Tom is and I have a lot of guests that talk about this, is there's a lot of times as entrepreneurs you're going to be in the light, but you're also going to fall into the darkness. And there's times when I know that it happens to everybody. I could be on cloud 9 for 3 months, and then I could just have a month, man, where I just feel like kind of depressed, and you got to almost fight your way through it. It's like every day you feel like you want to just go hide under a rock. You don't want to talk to anybody. You find yourself being disconnected. And I honestly think that there's so many big highs as an entrepreneur that there's going to be like lows that are just as intense sometimes. And one of the things that I talk about is how to lean into the darkness, and meaning that I want to, instead of just running through it like it's a spooky forest that I just want to get through and get out of, as quick as possible. I got to the point in life where I understand that I feel that God gives us these moments, kind of like God gives us the night to sleep, so that way that we can be better when we come out into the light. How God talks about that the light does not serve the darkness, but the darkness will serve the light. Right. So I feel like there's these moments that where we go into this entrepreneur darkness where we're a little bit brought down, but we're supposed to go in there and actually lean in and explore, because there's something amazing that we can conquer. There's some sort of underlying feeling that we can explore about ourselves. And when we step out into the light and we have our torch ablazing again, we're going to have a stronger torch. And with that torch, we're going to be able to find other people that are in the darkness with a tiny little flickering flame and light that thing up. And that's part of my whole philosophy is like, how do we take the darkness? When I believe that when you find some happiness in the darkness, like you understand that these times, it's like a cycle that God puts you through, that these times are going to come. I mean, even Mother Teresa said that she felt that she was disconnected for God for like 20 years or something like that, but she still remained faithful. I mean, it was an incredible thing. I don't remember the exact amount of years, but she still remained faithful. And I believe that that's part of us becoming bigger and better and seeing that growth in our life, because again, that darkness is designed to serve the light. And what do you think about that?
So let me ask you a question. When you're in a dark time, what questions do you ask yourself?
I tend to ask myself empowering questions. I want to ask myself a question that's not like, it will never be anything like, woe is me, or why has this happened to me? It would never be anything like that. I tend to ask myself empowering questions like, what am I to learn from this? In this moment, how am I to learn? And then the second thing that I ask myself, I do actually, is I know that it's time to double down on what I call my MITs, my most important task, because I believe that as an entrepreneur, if you can learn how to grind out the really important things in your life when you really don't feel like it, you're going to be ahead you're going to you're in line with self-mastery. You're really in line with self-mastery, almost like 75 hard. I just completed 75 hard. And do you know what that is, Tom?
I've seen it, and my hat's off. The respect is there. I'm proud of you. Way to go.
Well, let me just explain to you what I learned about 75 hard, Tom, because I even got sick during it and had a fever and had to take these ice cold showers and all this kind of stuff. And it was brutal. I mean, 2 workouts a day, 8 most important task, all this stuff every day on the diet, all that stuff every day. But what I learned from that, Tom, is that if you put a framework in your life, like you're talking about, you put these habits in your life that you know that are going to get you to where you want to go. If you live your life with a solid framework, meaning every day it's non-negotiable, I do this, I don't care what I feel like, you're going to get the results. You're going to eventually get the results. And what I learned is if you can put a framework in your life that's going to design to get you to where you need to go, that's non-negotiable, that even during these dark times, if you can, muster up the strength and the courage to do it then, that you're going to be so much more powerful when you step out into the light. So I think just like sleep, it charges you to step out into the light even better, even greater individual.
I love it. I like your first question. That's the one that I asked. God, what are you teaching me here?
Yeah.
Right. What's the message here? What am I, a couple of things that I love is we talked about this on one of our groups, and one of our guys, his name is Jose Garcia Ponte. He's a command sergeant major, retired. And we said, what do you do? And he says, I go run on the beach and reinvestigate my why. Right. Yeah. So he gets active and he gets into his why. Here's a specific thing that I did. I wrote this book called Stronger. It's an ebook. We give it away for free. And I call it the middle of the night wake up call. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you haven't had at least a dozen of these, you're lying. I mean, and that is, things aren't churning. There's bills coming. The thing you thought was going to be the home run, the anchor, the bench, starts eroding. And so you wake up in the middle of the night. What do you do? So I put together this process. And so if you're in the dark, if you're going through one of those times, this is what you can do, is you get in a quiet place. In the middle of the night, that's usually easy in your house, but sometimes this happens during the middle of the day. So you need a quiet, distraction-free place. And the first thing you do is you write your gratitude list. Yep. And the reason is that gratitude and fear can't exist in the same place. And you write down everything that you're grateful for, and go long. And I'm grateful for my sweater. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful. My grandpuppy's in the house right now. And you just go down that list, right? And you kind of just overwhelm your brain with the gratitude. Number 2 is you write down your victory list. What have I done in the past? It could be sports. It could be a business, anything, a grade, an award, something that you're proud of. And what you're doing in this case is you're reaffirming, I've done it before, I can do it again. The third thing you do, and you know this because you do it, John, it's 2 chairs. Yeah. So your mind is in the right place now. And you go to God and you ask God 3 questions. God, do you know what's going on? Well, of course he does. He's God. Number 2, God, are you big enough to handle it? Well, yeah, absolutely. He's God. 3, what's the plan? And this is where you just shut up, right? You don't ask any more questions. You don't dig into a devotional at this point. You just listen to what God has to say. And that's like 5 minutes. And then when you're through that, okay, you've gotten the download, you write down the problem, whatever it is, in as much detail as you can. And you divide it into 2 halves. The part of the problem that you own and can do something about, and the part of the problem you have no control over. And this is where your MITs, I love that term.
Right. Yeah.
It's a great term. It's for us. It's our PPAs, our purpose producing activity. It's whatever it is. You write down the plan of action that you were going to implement immediately to solve that problem, and you detail that plan out. You put it on your calendar. You schedule it. You have the sequence. You do all of those things, and you take ownership of everything that you're going to do, not the result. All we can do is control our energy and our thought, our mindset when we're doing it. We can go out, we can give everything we've got into it, and then we turn it loose. And then the things you have no control over, you say, God, this is yours. I hereby release myself from figuring out COVID. I hereby release myself from figuring out the political scene.
Yeah.
These are your deals to go and handle. When you get that done, you go back to bed.
Man, that is incredible. I'm going to be re-listening to this. That's the one I'm going to re-listen to, my friend, because that is absolute pure gold, what you just laid out there. You just dropped the keys of the kingdom on that one. Like, even if you're not going through a tough time, you should do that.
Yeah.
Because I think, that's the key. That's what you said at the beginning, is just simply gaining clarity. And I think a lot of folks have problem with not only gaining clarity, but figuring out what tasks they got to do just to get started. And I think sometimes it's easier for guys like me and you that at one point we figured it out. I mean, I still remember for years feeling like I wasted every day of my life. And from the outside looking in, people thought that I was crazy because I was opening up businesses left and right and executing left and right. But I never felt fully accomplished because I never took the time to actually organize them into a structure and create an exact map that I could see movement and progress on a daily basis.
Yep.
And,
Dad had this quote. He said, so when you're in the dark, when you're feeling down and depressed, he said this: logic will not change an emotion, but action will.
yes.
And so that's the key. You can't think your way out of that state. You have to take action of putting in the right input. You've got to take action of listing out what you're grateful for. You got to take action of recalling your past victories. And then you got to take action to give to God what's his and take ownership of what's yours. You've got to take action with your MITs to get that done. And then you got to go do it. When you start doing this, that's why, Rabbi Lapin, who said that the opposite of depression isn't happiness. The opposite of depression is purpose. You see,
yes,
that's a powerful thing. And so when we get discouraged, the word we put on it is unhappiness. I'm not happy. I'm depressed. So how do you get that back? It's not cheesecake. It's not a Netflix binge. It's taking action towards your purpose. And as business owners, entrepreneurs, we're blessed because we got more than we can ever get done today. All we got to do, it's not for lack of ideas. It's just prioritizing them and doing them.
Right. That's incredible. I always say that we got two types of suffering that we're going to have in our life. The one type of suffering is going to be self-inflicted, meaning that we are going to force ourselves to do things that sometimes we might not want to do. And that means go work out. That means go get this task done that's been looming over your head for a long time and actually doing it. We're either going to live with a short-term pain that actually has long-term happiness, or we're going to live with short-term little conveniences that lead to long-term pain. More along the lines of long suffering, meaning that you're waking up in the middle of the night thinking you haven't got anything done, and you wake up in the morning and you don't feel like you have a purpose, and you go throughout the day and you're driving home from work and you get the same monotonous routine that's just starting to overcome your life. It's because you're taking all these tiny little conveniences everywhere. You're saying, instead of eating healthy today, 3 meals out of the day, I'm going to eat bad all day long, which pollutes your body. Instead of drinking water, which is, I could go very deep into water. I go into the crazy stuff about the energy with the water, that what it can do for you. instead of drinking water, you're filling your body with coffee and caffeine and energy drinks all day long, and you're crashing and you're going up and down, and you're doing all of these things to avoid actually getting uncomfortable and doing the things that you're and delaying gratification. Delaying gratification is where it's at. People don't understand that. Anybody who's wealthy in any sort, they've learned that art, how to delay gratification. People that have could spend all their money on everything. Like I always say, Tom, if today you make $10,000 or $5,000 a month and you spend $5,000, none of that's going to change if you make 10,000 or 20,000 or 30,000, because them same spending habits are going to they're going to move right along with whatever your next phase of life. It's not a lack of money. It's a lack of discipline and good habits and delayed gratification.
Amen. I got a good friend. His name is Chris Patterson. 25 years ago, his company moved him to Dallas, actually Plano, to take over the Q Athletic Club. Q is like a big Lifetime, one of the big giant groups. And I think his club was rated like 48th out of 49th in the country. That's why they brought him in. Well, he was a Zig fan. And so the reason he had such a successful club where he was, and the reason they moved him, is because he was implementing everything about secrets of closing the sale. So he starts training his team, and they're getting zigged and they're getting all this stuff. And he's, building his leaders up and his managers and his supervisors. And then one of them comes to him one day and says, "Hey, there's a client, a prospect in, you need to take them on the tour." And Chris said, he looked at him and he said, "No, I've trained you. You can do this." He goes, "No, you're going to want to do it. Hand in the driver's license." Well, it was my dad.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So Chris tells the story, he's kind of freaking out. He gives the tour, doesn't let on at all that he knows who Dad is. At the end, Dad signs up, but in that process, Chris started using the secrets of closing the sales closes on Dad.
Yeah.
So Dad leans over the table and says, "You know who I am, don't you?" And Chris, came clean. And so when they were leaving, Dad looked at Chris and he said, "Chris, I'm also looking for a personal trainer to help me out. Do you know anybody?" And Chris said this is great wisdom. He said, "I tell you what, Mr. Ziglar, if you'll be my mental coach while I'm training you, I will personally train you. And, it'll just be a gift from each of us. How does that sound?" So Dad agreed. And Chris is a big, he fits the role very well.
Yeah.
So Chris says Zig comes in the first time and they get on a preacher curl. And the preacher curl is a machine, and Dad's in his 60s. And so it's just a bicep curl with your elbow. And
Yes.
he said, before I could change the weight, he said, Zig started lifting it and he's going 1, 2. And by the third one, his veins are starting to pop out because it had too much weight on it. And Chris says, "Mr. Ziglar, let me reset that. We didn't mean to start there." And he said he just looked at me and smiled, and 4 or 5, and then 6 was slow, and then 7 was slower. And he said he started sweating and all this stuff was coming out, 8, 9. He gets to 10, and in his head, he's thinking, "Oh no, famous motivational speaker has heart attack being trained by young punk trainer." So he says 10 and you're done. And he said, "Your dad did one more." And he puts it down and he's like, the veins are going, his muscles are shot. And he said, he looked at me and he said, "Chris," and he pointed his finger and he said, "Chris, you don't have to like everything you do."
Yeah.
And wow, when you get comfortable with that as an owner, as a leader, as a mom, or as a dad, that's a powerful thing. You see, Dad worked out not because he had this infatuation with working out, but because that was the foundation that allowed him to fulfill his purpose. And because his purpose was so clear, he worked out his whole life, ever since 74. That's when he made the commitment and worked out his whole life.
It's like Muhammad Ali says, he hated every minute of that training, but he decided he would do it now and live the rest of his life a champion. You know, I hated every minute of it, every minute I went in there, but I now live the rest of my life as a champion. And I talk about this, you know, it's like people talk about getting out of your comfort zone. Well, it's uncomfortable out there. Right. So the comfort zone is very comfortable, and growth is outside the comfort zone. So you're going to get uncomfortable if you want to grow.
One of our guys, he's one of our speakers. His name is Kerry Love. And he says, there is no such thing as the comfort zone. It's a place we've invented to coast in. He said there's either the growth zone or the death zone. We're either getting better or getting worse.
That's true.
Right? It's sales. We're either getting closer to the sale or we're getting further away. There is no, as soon as they say, I'll tell you tomorrow, every second that goes by is a greater chance you're not going to get it. Yes. Marketing, your marketing success depends, the next rhythm that you've got to create. It's, and it's dying until the next rhythm starts.
Yes.
So everything in life. So from Kerry, I learned, let's not even use the word comfort zone. We've got a choice, life or death. That's easier.
Yeah. And that's the feeling that we actually feel when we don't feel satisfied with our accomplishments for that day. We actually feel ourselves dying, like slowly dying.
That's right.
And, I truly believe that that's the way our body reacts to our soul not being completely fulfilled. I'm a big fan of Wallace Wattles, The Science of Getting Rich, the book. And he talks about how a child is sitting at a piano and the child is trying to play the piano. And he asked the child, says, "What are you doing there?" He goes, "I can hear the music in my mind, but my hands won't move right." Okay. So God is delivering to his soul this music that he's trying to play with his life. But God is also teaching you that it's not going to come easy. You're going to have to come back day in and day out. You're going to have to become an individual who studies this and learns this. And I want to say that's one of the biggest rewards that God has ever given us, because it's not about what you get. It's about who you become along that journey. It's who you come along that journey. I'll give you a quick story here, Tom. I had a guy in one of my last mastermind groups that I was involved in. And he ended up being worth about $50 million. Real estate guy, just a smart guy. So he came to the leader of the group, and he told him, this was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. He was just, he felt horrible inside. He just felt sick. He felt like he couldn't get motivated. He just had no motivation at all. So he went and gave away all of his money to charity, down to $50,000. Gave away all of his money. He just said it didn't matter anymore. He goes, I almost feel like I don't even want to be here because I'm just not motivated. I don't have that drive and desire. So no, this was probably about 6 years ago that happened, when he gave away all his money to charity. Today he's worth $8 million. Because that man can give away all of his money. It doesn't matter. He never gave away what he became on that journey, because you can drop that man anywhere. And what he learned on that journey will put him right back to where he was. Kind of like Warren Buffett giving away all his money, and now he's worth 10 times the amount. We thought, oh man, Warren Buffett just gave away 35 billion or something like that. And now he's right back up there as one of the most wealthiest people in the world. He can't stop. It's who he's became on the journey. And that's the gift I believe that God is trying to give us. It's like we're shaping our character day in and day out, and he's teaching us all these wonderful things along that journey. So I think falling in love with the journey is just key, and falling in love with the darkness as much as you do the light, just understanding that you're there to learn something. And the more that you learn, the more that you can help people. Because as you know, Rabbi Lapton, as well as I do, he taught us all that the reason why we're actually here is just to help each other.
That's right. Yep. When you solve someone's problem, you're often rewarded with certificates of appreciation.
Yeah.
We call that money.
We call that money. Yes.
The more problems you solve or the way he says it is this: God is never happier with his children than when they're solving the problems of his other children. Interesting in sales, in Hebrew, there's two words for the word sale. And one of the words means like a transaction. It doesn't have much high moral value or meaning. It just describes it. And in Hebrew, every letter and every word has a moral value relationship. So the word for sale that I'm talking about has a very high moral value. And what it means is to look into the future of your prospect, to anticipate a pain or problem or challenge they may face, and then to help them avoid that pain, problem, or challenge.
That's amazing.
So I just want you to know, could there be a higher moral calling than to help one of God's creatures avoid a pain, a problem, or a challenge? And so when you sell something, know that God, the creator, is smiling.
Yep. That's awesome, Tom. Well, I know you probably got to go, and this podcast is running on about an hour. So, man, just incredible stuff there. Incredible stuff. I'm going to listen to this podcast, probably later today. I'm going to re-listen to it because, guys, if you guys weren't writing down notes on this podcast, you need to step back, listen to some of the things that Tom was talking about, especially when he was organizing exactly how you need to, find your gratitude, find where you want to be, and how you can create them tangible steps to get there. I believe that's one of the biggest problems that we face out there. It's the biggest problem that I hear from a lot of you guys. And it's one of the main reasons a lot of you guys are inside of my coaching group and stuff like that, because every week I continuously tell you to keep doing that and in many different ways, but that's what we do. So anyhow, I just want to say, Tom, I am so honored to have you on this podcast. Just an incredible blessing, and what a wonderful conversation, and what a great way to leave all in the entire Facebook audience now their day, and then everybody who listens to the podcast to be able to learn all of this stuff from you today. We really greatly appreciate that, my friend.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me on.
All right, everybody, I appreciate it, and as usual, we're going to see you on that next one.